Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the airwaves of our podcast. Today's story is titled, Before the Wedding, My Mother Asked Me to Put the Deed to My Massive $1.5 million condo in her name and ordered me under no circumstances to tell my fiancé's family. I didn't understand why, but I quietly did as she asked. At the wedding reception, my mother-in-law declared, "Your large condo becomes mine today. It will be my retirement home." I only said one sentence in response, a sentence that left the entire groom's family in a dead silence, a silence I still remember every time I walk past banquet halls flooded with the light of crystal chandeliers, hearing the sounds of solemn music and loud applause. I remember every single detail of that fateful evening, the evening when a single sentence from my future mother-in-law derailed my life into a completely different direction. It was painful, it was humiliating, but thanks to it, I climbed out of a deep abyss that I had mistakenly confused with happiness. My name is Sophia. That year, I was 28 years old. I worked as a department head at a major real estate development firm in Manhattan. I am an only child. My parents weren't fabulously wealthy, but their standard of living was comfortable enough for me to grow up in a decent environment, receive a great education, and understand that money must be earned honestly. And that feelings, if given, must be genuine. By the time the wedding approached, I already owned a massive 2,000 square foot condo in a prestigious downtown neighborhood, right near Tribeca. I had bought it with my own savings, combined with a considerable sum that my parents gifted me everything they had saved during their long years of hard work. People said I was lucky. I was about to get married, and I already had a home, a car, and a stable career. I myself thought I was truly lucky, because on top of all that, I had Jared. We had been dating for 3 years. He was quiet, a man of few words, tall and lean, and his smile always seemed so kind. In all our years together, he never raised his voice at me, never left me alone on the street after an argument, never forgot my birthday. Whenever I stayed late at the office, he would quietly bring takeout to my desk. Whenever I was sick, he sat by my side, brewed me tea, reminded me to take my medicine, and placed a cool washcloth on my forehead. There were nights when we would drive down the West Side Highway, the cold wind off the Hudson River hitting our faces. He would hold my hand tightly and say that, after the wedding, he would never let anyone hurt me. How could a woman in her late 20s not melt at such words? But about 3 months before the wedding, my mother suddenly called me over to her house, closed her bedroom door tightly, and said something that, at the time, seemed bizarre and incomprehensible to me. "Sophia, next week, you need to put the title of your condo in my name." I thought I had misheard her. I looked up at my mother. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, tightly gripping the edge of her cardigan, avoiding my eyes. Since I was a little girl, my mother had never asked for anything that was mine, much less interfered with my finances. So, her words left me in shock. "Mom, why put it in your name? It's my condo. Jared and I were planning to move in there after the wedding." My mother sighed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Listen to me just this once, honey. Transfer the deed to me, and do not say a word to his family. If they ask, tell them you're renting it out or that it belongs to an acquaintance." I was completely lost. "Mom, what are you afraid of? That condo is a premarital asset. What does it have to do with my husband's family?" My mother looked at me for a long time. I will never forget that look. It wasn't a look of greed or calculation. It was the look of a woman who had lived through enough bitterness to recognize what a young girl couldn't yet see. She just said, "Do as I say. You'll understand everything later. I would never hurt you." I turned to my dad, hoping he would say something different. But he just quietly prepared his coffee, set his mug on the table, and said slowly, "Some things are better left protected. And there are exit strategies whose value you only understand when you actually need them." That day, I went back to my apartment with absolute chaos in my head. I was angry, genuinely angry. I thought my parents were being overly paranoid, thinking the worst of good people. Jared had been so wonderful to me. His parents, in my presence, had always been nothing but kind. They spoke softly and politely. My future mother-in-law, Eleanor, often called just to check on me. Sometimes, she would tell me not to work too late. Other times, she said that once I was her daughter-in-law, she wouldn't demand strict traditions, she just wanted her son and me to live in harmony. How could anyone distrust people like that? And yet, in the end, out of the deep trust I had in my parents, and because deep down I had always been an obedient daughter, I hired a real estate attorney and initiated the process of a quitclaim deed to transfer the property into my mother's name. It went faster than I expected. The paperwork was filed with the city, all the legalities resolved. From that day on, the condo valued at over $1.5 million in downtown Manhattan was no longer in my name. The night before the wedding, my mother came into my bedroom again. I was trying on my dress, looking at myself in the mirror, feeling a mix of nerves and overwhelming joy. My mother walked up, tenderly adjusted my veil, and took my hand. Her hand was ice cold. Tomorrow, no matter what happens, do not be afraid. Remember, your home is safe now. I laughed. Mom, you talk as if I'm going to war tomorrow. But my mother didn't smile. She just squeezed my hand. Her eyes grew red. Sometimes, this is worse than a war. I didn't believe her then. Not until the wedding reception began. That day, the banquet hall of a luxury high-rise hotel with panoramic views of the New York skyline sparkled with lights. It was packed with guests. I stood in my white wedding gown, holding my bouquet, next to Jared under the warm glow of the spotlights. The MC delivered the classic congratulatory speeches everyone knows. Friends applauded. Families from both sides smiled and mingled. From the outside, it looked like the wedding of my dreams. What more could a 8-year-old girl want? Standing next to the man she considered her destiny. Then came the time for the parents' toasts. Eleanor walked up to the stage in an elegant, dark red evening gown, her hair perfectly styled, her face radiant. At first, she spoke beautifully. She thanked the guests, the relatives, and thanked my parents for raising such a smart, sweet daughter who was joining their family today. Everyone listened and nodded in approval. Standing down below, I even felt myself tearing up. And then, bringing the microphone closer to her mouth, smiling as if she were discussing something completely trivial, she said, "Taking advantage of this joyous occasion, I want to say something so that you kids don't have to worry. Your massive downtown condo, Sophia, they say it's worth over $1.5 million. How about we put the deed in my name today? Arthur and I are getting older. It will be a spacious, comfortable home for our retirement, and you kids will have peace of mind." Hearing that, a loud ringing filled my ears. The entire ballroom went dead silent. The music stopped abruptly. Even the clinking of glasses ceased. Over 200 people, who, just a moment before, had been laughing and chatting, suddenly lost their voices. I stared blankly at the stage, thinking I had misheard. But no. Eleanor kept smiling, looking down at me expectantly, as if she had just asked me to pass the breadbasket to the table, rather than demanding I hand over the real estate I had saved my entire life for. I turned to Jared, but what truly pierced me with an icy chill wasn't his mother's words, but his own face. In that moment, he didn't look surprised. He just placed a hand on my lower back and muttered, "Sophia, calm down." Just 3 words that made my heart plummet into an abyss. That meant he knew. It meant my mother wasn't paranoid. It meant that 3 months ago, when she forced me to transfer the title, she had foreseen this trap that I, in my absolute blindness, had missed. On stage, Eleanor kept smiling. Her voice became even sweeter. "Sophia, you are the eldest daughter-in-law. Taking care of your husband's parents is the right thing to do. The condo will belong to all of you in the future anyway. I'll just hold on to the paperwork for safekeeping." Whispers erupted across the ballroom. I heard one of my college friends gasp loudly. I saw my aunt slam her coffee cup down onto the table. I saw my father sitting perfectly still, but the veins on his hands, gripping the armrests, were bulging. And my mother. My mother just looked at me. She wasn't crying, she wasn't speaking, she wasn't panicking. She looked at me with absolute calm, as if reminding me, "Honey, the time has come for you to defend yourself." I squeezed the bouquet in my hands, so hard the rose petals crushed. Suddenly, I remembered everything. How my future father-in-law, Arthur, had casually asked which specific neighborhood the condo was in and whose name the mortgage and deed were under. How Eleanor had hinted that if a bride brought a solid trust fund or assets into the marriage, the young family would have it so much easier. How Jared had mentioned that after the wedding, we should merge all our assets so there wouldn't be yours and mine. It turned out none of it was a coincidence. It turned out everything had been calculated. I took a deep breath. I knew that from this moment on, my life would never be the same. I lifted my head and took a step forward. My fingertips stopped shaking. When I finally spoke, my voice, to my own surprise, sounded crystal clear and calm through the MC's microphone as the DJ had frozen right next to me. "Excuse me, Eleanor," I said. And in that moment, as the entire ballroom stared at me holding their breath, I understood. The next sentence would determine not only the fate of this wedding, but also who I was, a woman capable of protecting her life. Or a fool who would surrender everything to people who never actually loved her. I spoke not loudly, but with perfect clarity, enunciating every word so precisely that I could hear my own heartbeat. "Which condo are you talking about?" As soon as I asked, the room plunged into an even denser silence than before. Eleanor, standing on stage, was still smiling, but a flash of impatience appeared in the corners of her eyes. She decided I was playing naive and chuckled, her voice dripping with honey, like she was coaxing a toddler. "Oh, come on, sweetie, which one do you think?" "Your condo, of course. The big one downtown, the 2,000 square foot one. You and Jared said you'd live there after the wedding, and I figured such a spacious place would be much better for us seniors, and you kids can just find something else." I looked directly at the stage. "And you say that this very condo needs to be put in your name today?" Eleanor's smile widened. "Correct. Consider it your gift to your husband's parents. You are our daughter-in-law, and quite a wealthy girl at that. Showing respect to your husband's parents is your duty. I'm saying it openly, so there's no embarrassment in front of the relatives." Down below, people started exchanging looks. I clearly heard an older gentleman at the groom's family table cough uncomfortably. At our family's table, my aunt went pale. My best friends, seated near the stage, were gripping each other's hands tightly. And strangely, after the initial shock, I calmed down very quickly. It was the serene calm of someone who has just seen the true faces of the people she was about to call family. I turned my head back to Jared. "You knew about this from the very beginning, didn't you?" Jared flinched slightly, not out of surprise, but because he didn't expect me to have the guts to ask him directly in front of everyone. He leaned in, still trying to keep a fake smile plastered on his face to hide what was happening from the prying eyes, and whispered, "Sophia, let's talk about this later. Today is our celebration." I stared at him for a long time. Our celebration. If it's our celebration, why is his mother standing with a microphone in front of 200 guests demanding the bride's real estate? If it's our celebration, why didn't he stop his mother after her very first word? If it's our celebration, why am I the only one backed into a corner? Suddenly, a laugh bubbled up in my chest. A laugh that almost made me cry. Eleanor, up on stage, began to lose her patience. She walked down a few steps and spoke louder, as if terrified the guests in the back wouldn't hear her. "Sophia, do not put me in an awkward position in front of everyone. Our entire family is here, parents from both sides. I am saying this for your own good. Your condo will eventually belong to you kids anyway. What does it matter if I simply hold on to the deed?" At that moment, my future father-in-law, Arthur, slowly stood up. He was wearing a strict black tuxedo. He looked incredibly respectable. Anyone who didn't know the truth would take him for a cultured, decent man. He picked up his water glass, cleared his throat, and spoke as if explaining the most obvious truths in the world. "Sophia, don't misunderstand your mother-in-law. No one in our family is trying to take what's yours. But we are a family now. You have to respect your elders. We raised Jared, and now in our golden years, we simply want to live in decent conditions. As a daughter-in-law, if you can help the family, it's for the best. Hearing that, the tips of my fingers turned to ice. No one is trying to take what's yours, yet they are standing in the middle of a wedding banquet, in front of all our family and friends, openly demanding a $1.5 million piece of real estate. I smiled. The smile was so pale that even I surprised myself. You are right, Arthur. In a family, one should respect their elders. But I want to ask you a question. If your own daughter were standing in my shoes today, and the groom's family demanded her property in the middle of her wedding, would you consider that normal? Arthur froze. Eleanor immediately jumped in, her voice turning sharp. What gives you the right? That is utter disrespect. I am talking about family matters and you start measuring and comparing. I lifted my head and looked right at her. Matters of what family, Eleanor? I haven't even lived a single day in your house as a daughter-in-law. And even if I had, my condo would still be mine. No one has the right, in the middle of my wedding, to demand I transfer the title of my property to someone else. The murmurs in the ballroom intensified, turning into a loud buzz. Someone pulled out a smartphone. I knew someone was recording it. I knew that in a few hours, this story would spread like wildfire among our mutual acquaintances. But in that moment, I wasn't afraid anymore. The worst had already happened. All that was left was to tell the truth. Suddenly, Jared grabbed my wrist. His fingers clamped down hard, harder than ever before. Sophia. Shut up. I looked down at his hand, and then at him. You're hurting me. Jared froze. I continued, slowly pronouncing every word as if locking the final door to my soul. Do you know what hurts me the most? Not that your mother asked for my apartment, but that when she said it, you didn't even look surprised. You just told me to calm down. That means you knew. You knew in advance, I repeated, lowering my voice so the whole room could catch it. You knew beforehand, and all these months, you held my hand. We picked out the wedding dress, we booked the venue, we mailed the invitations. You smiled at me, told me you loved me. You promised that with you, I would never suffer. It turns out the future you were painting had to start with you stripping me of my home. Jared turned pale. He looked around, saw the glaring eyes of our relatives and friends, the raised phones, his parents paralyzed on the floor. Finally, he gritted his teeth and whispered, I didn't want it to be like this. Mom just wanted to live in a nicer place. The moment those words left his mouth, something inside me permanently snapped. Not a, Mom is wrong. Not a, forgive me. Not an, I don't agree with her. Just a, Mom wanted to live in a nicer place. I nodded. So, you agree with her? I didn't say that. But you didn't oppose her either. Jared was speechless. I turned around and walked over to the MC, politely asking for the microphone. He looked at me with a mix of pity and deep concern, but he handed it over. The ballroom fell dead silent again. I brought the microphone to my lips and heard my voice carry across the massive room. I apologized to all the guests, to the relatives, and the friends of both sides. Today was supposed to be a happy day, and I never wanted it to end like this. But since my future mother-in-law has asked the question in front of everyone, I will answer in front of everyone as well. Eleanor shouted, Sophia. I didn't look at her and continued. I cannot put that condo in your name. As soon as I said it, a collective gasp swept through the room. Eleanor practically lunged toward me. Why can't you? Stop talking in riddles in front of people. I turned to her. This time, I looked at her with absolute serenity. Because 3 months ago, I already transferred the title of that condo to my mother. Everyone froze, literally turned to stone. If the guests had been merely shocked up until that point, in that exact second, the entire ballroom turned into a statue garden. Eleanor's face morphed from cherry red to a deathly, sickening white. Arthur stood paralyzed. Jared let his arms drop weakly to his sides, staring at me like I was a complete stranger. I even heard someone at the nearest table drop a spoon onto a china plate. Eleanor was the first to react. Her voice cracked into a screech. "What did you say?" I answered with crystal clarity. "I said that this condo is currently in my mother's name. It is no longer my legal property. Therefore, today, I have nothing to put in your name." Eleanor stumbled back. All her previous confidence and smugness evaporated in an instant. She shot me a venomous glare and whipped around to Jared. "You knew about this?" Jared stammered. I didn't know. "She put the property in her mother's name, and you didn't know?" hissed Arthur. "Calm down." He tried to stop his wife, but Eleanor was beyond calming down. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You calculated this from the very beginning. You and your mother set a trap for us." I couldn't hold it back anymore, and I laughed. There were no tears, but there was a tight knot in my throat. We set a trap? Who just demanded my condo in the middle of a wedding banquet? Who tried to force me to prove my decency by handing over my life savings to my mother-in-law? You say we deceived you, but if the apartment were still in my name today, I assume you'd all be thrilled, right? Eleanor choked on her rage. At that moment, my mother stood up. I don't know how to describe that instant. My mother is not tall. She is petite. Wearing a simple but elegant light lilac dress, she looked modest in the middle of that ostentatious New York ballroom. But when she stepped forward, she radiated such sheer force that everyone remained silent. My mother walked slowly into the aisle and, lifting her chin, looked right at Eleanor. "She's right. I was the one who told Sophia to put the deed in my name." My mother's voice wasn't loud, but every word sounded as solid as a perfectly driven nail. "I did it because I am her mother. I gave birth to her, I raised her. I watched her fall in love, prepare for her wedding. I had to ensure my daughter had an exit strategy, and it turns out, my worries were completely justified." Eleanor trembled. You are insulting our family." My mother smiled ironically. "No, your family has insulted itself. No one forced you to grab a microphone and demand a house from the bride on her wedding day." Arthur tried to say something, but my father stood up before he could. He didn't yell, he didn't slam the table. He just delivered a single sentence that silenced the entire groom's side of the room. "We are giving our daughter away in marriage. We are not selling her." Tears filled my eyes. In 28 years, I had never seen my parents look so incredibly strong. They didn't cause a scene, they didn't scream, but every single one of their words carried enough weight to preserve the last shreds of my dignity in the middle of a room full of curious, staring eyes. Jared walked up to me and whispered, almost pleading, "Sophia, let's go to a private room. Let's talk alone. We can still fix this." I turned to him. This man who, the night before, held my hand and swore he would give me the most beautiful wedding, now stood here defenseless, weak, completely incapable of protecting me from his mother, and terrified of taking the side of the truth. I asked him in a very low voice, "What are you going to fix, Jared?" "Your love, or the condo, you can no longer get." Jared looked as if he had been slapped across the face. He stepped back. I knew it hurt him, but that pain had arrived far too late. I set my bridal bouquet down on the nearest table. A few crushed petals clung to my palm. I looked at them and suddenly realized they resembled my heart. Beautiful, tender. But if you squeeze them too hard, they crumble to dust. I pulled the veil from my hair. The entire room, holding its breath, watched me. I hadn't said anything yet, but everyone understood. When a bride takes off her veil in the middle of her own wedding reception, it means her soul has made a decision from which there is no return. I lifted my head for the last time that night, looked at Jared, and said slowly, "Jared, I am not going to pretend that nothing happened today." And my next sentence was the one that truly turned the groom's family to stone, putting an absolute end to this wedding, which I had once considered the beginning of my happily ever after. I looked directly at Jared, still holding the white veil in my hand. My voice was so calm that even I marveled at my composure amidst the chaos. "Jared, there is no wedding." Those 5 words dropped into the silence. They weren't loud or harsh, but they were so heavy that the entire ballroom seemed to buckle under their weight. Jared froze completely. The color drained from his face, his lips moved a few times, but he couldn't form a single word. Eleanor practically ran down from the stage, the hem of her red gown dragging on the steps. Her voice cracked, turning shrill and vicious, stripping away any trace of her fake sweetness. "Sophia, don't you dare repeat that." I turned to her. I wasn't avoiding her gaze anymore, nor was I speaking in a soft voice like before. I said, "There is no wedding." Eleanor's eyes widened. "You've lost your mind." The invitations were sent, the tables are set, the guests are seated. You can't just say, "There is no wedding." You are making a mockery of our family. I laughed, a tired, cold laugh. Your family made a mockery of itself the moment you took the microphone and demanded my property. Not when I refused to go along with it. Eleanor gasped for air. Arthur rushed over, trying to speak calmly, as if a soft tone could put the genie back in the bottle. "Sophia, let's not be hasty. Let's all go to a private suite and talk. Marriage is a serious commitment. You can't just throw everything away like this." I looked at him. I agree. Marriage is a serious commitment. And precisely because it is serious, I cannot enter a marriage where, from day one, my husband's family is plotting to strip me of my assets. At that moment, Jared seemed to wake up from his stupor. He lunged toward me, trying to grab my hand, but I pulled away. "Sophia, don't do this. We've loved each other for 3 years. Are you going to throw it all away over a misunderstanding?" Hearing the word misunderstanding, I felt bile rise in my throat. "A misunderstanding?" I asked softly. "I will ask you only one question. If that condo were still in my name today, would you have stopped your mother?" Jared fell silent. I stared right into his eyes. "Answer me." He looked away. I would have found a way to talk to her. Afterwards? When? After I was pressured into signing the deed over in front of our entire extended family? Or after I became your wife and had no exit strategies left? "Sophia, don't assume the worst." I nodded. Tears pricked my eyes, but my voice held firm. "You're right, I shouldn't have assumed the worst. I trusted you. I trusted you so much that when my mother asked me to change the title on the apartment, I actually got angry with her. I trusted you, and your family. I trusted you to the point that only standing here today did I realize what an absolute fool I've been." As soon as I said the word, my mother quickly stepped up and took my hand. "Sophia, don't speak like that." I turned to her, my eyes burning. "But it's the truth, Mom. If you hadn't seen this coming, today I would be backed into a corner with no way out." My mother squeezed my hand. "You are not a fool, honey. You are just honest. And honest people trust others too much." Those words tightened my chest. But before I could respond, a sharp female voice pierced the air from the groom's side of the room. "What kind of poorly raised girl is this? The wedding was going perfectly fine, and she throws a tantrum." I turned around. It was Jared's Aunt Susan. Up until that point, she had been sitting quietly, but now she stood up, hands on her hips, glaring at me like I was a spoiled brat. "Let me tell you something. When a girl enters her husband's family, she needs to be modest." And what is this? Her mother-in-law says 2 words, and she starts making faces in front of the whole family. With an attitude like that, she's gonna be completely useless in the future. Before I could even process the insult, my own aunt jumped out of her chair. "Who exactly are you calling useless?" Aunt Susan sneered. "Her." My aunt stepped forward, her voice turning to pure steel. "Do you have a daughter? If you do, when you marry her off and the groom's family demands $1 million piece of Manhattan real estate in the middle of the reception, tell her to hand it over quietly. But my niece is not going to live like that." The tension in the room spiked again. The guests fractured into factions, buzzing with loud whispers. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others glared at the groom's family with pure disgust, some looked at me with deep sympathy, while others were simply eating up the drama. Jared looked around, his face burning with humiliation. He lowered his voice, barely containing his anger. "Sophia, do you want me to get on my knees right now so you're satisfied?" I froze for a moment. It turned out that, even now, he thought this was all about his wounded pride. I spoke slowly. "I don't need you on your knees. I just needed you, in the exact moment your mother said those words, to walk up to her and say, 'Mom, that is Sophia's condo. You shouldn't speak like that.' Just one sentence. But you couldn't even say it." Jared clenched his jaw. "Because she's my mother." I smiled through my tears. "Yes, because she's your mother." "And what am I to you?" That question paralyzed him. I didn't wait for an answer. I walked over to the table, placed my veil down, and slipped the wedding ring off my finger. Every motion was deliberate and slow, as if I were peeling off my last remaining illusions. Eleanor, seeing this, truly panicked. "What are you doing?" I lifted my head. "I am leaving." "Don't you dare!" She lunged at me, grabbing my arm. Her manicured nails dug into my skin. "If you walk out of here today, you will spend the rest of your life hanging your head in shame. People will laugh in your face. They'll say you were dumped, that your wedding was cancelled, that no one else will ever marry you." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. I saw this type of woman so clearly, the kind who weaponizes other people's fears to maintain control. She wasn't terrified that I would suffer. She was terrified that I actually had the spine to walk away. I slowly pried her fingers off my arm. "You're wrong. The person who disgraced herself today is not me." Furious, Eleanor raised her hand to strike me, but she never made contact. My father stepped forward and intercepted her wrist. My father's face in that moment was extraordinarily cold. "If you touch my daughter, canceling this wedding will be the least of your problems today." Eleanor froze. Arthur rushed in to pull his wife back, but the look he shot my family was one of pure, unmasked malice. The respectable facade had completely shattered. All that remained was the frustration of a man who hadn't gotten his payday. He spoke with a heavy, menacing tone. "How did you raise your daughter? To allow her to be so insolent at her own wedding?" My father answered instantly, without raising his voice. But every word hit like a sledgehammer. "And how did you raise your son? To allow his mother, in the middle of a wedding, to extort his wife's life savings?" Arthur went completely silent. From a neighboring table, someone muttered, "He's right." Suddenly, Jared walked over to my parents. He slightly bowed his head. "I'm so sorry." My heart sank. Those apologies should have come earlier, before he allowed his mother to humiliate me, before he watched my desperation in silence. Before everything collapsed into dust. My mother looked at him with deep sadness and total detachment. "I liked you, Jared. I liked you because you seemed like a good man. It seemed like you loved Sophia. But a man who truly loves a woman does not allow his future wife to be humiliated in front of a crowd." Jared looked up, his eyes red. "I know, it's my fault." My mother shook her head. "You're not just at fault, Jared. You are weak. And a man's weakness sometimes injures a woman much worse than pure malice." Hearing this, Jared dropped his head. I turned away. I didn't want to look at him anymore, because the more I looked, the more the last 3 years of my youth felt like a stabbing pain. Pain, not because I lost a man, but because I realized this man never possessed the strength to protect me in the first place. The MC stood awkwardly in the corner. The hotel's banquet manager walked over, concern etched across his face. Guests started standing up. My bridesmaids rushed toward the stage. Chloe, my best friend, grabbed my shoulders. "Sophia. Are you okay?" I looked at her and managed a faint smile. "I'm alive." Chloe's eyes welled up. "If you're walking out, we're walking out with you." The other girls behind her nodded fiercely. Just that small gesture warmed my soul. I took a deep breath and spoke loud enough for the room to hear. I apologize for the inconvenience this has caused everyone. With this, our wedding ceremony is over. If the venue continues the dinner service, please, stay and eat. Consider it an apology from our family. Eleanor shrieked. Sophia, you do not have the right to decide that. I turned around. I have the right to decide my own life. With that, I gathered the heavy skirt of my wedding dress and walked down from the stage. With every step, I could clearly hear my heartbeat. I heard the whispers, the gasps, the clicks of smartphone cameras, the sharp clacking of my heels against the marble floor. But strangely, I didn't feel weak. On the contrary, I felt like I had just broken out of a dark, suffocating cage. Even if a massive storm was waiting for me outside. Jared ran after me. Sophia, wait! I didn't turn around. He grabbed my arm again this time, not with force, but with a trembling, desperate hand. I am begging you. Give me a chance to explain. I stopped and faced him. His tuxedo was still perfectly pressed. His bow tie was straight, his shoes shined. Everything about his exterior was flawless. Only the trust between us had been burned to the ground. What do you want to explain? I asked. Jared struggled to speak. I didn't think my mom was going to say it right now, but I knew she was going to ask for the condo. You stayed silent, and that is enough. I nodded. Then, I slowly took the engagement ring off my finger, a cold piece of platinum I had worn for months. I placed it directly into his palm. This is for you. Jared stared down at the ring. His body turned to stone. Jared, I don't regret the 3 years we spent together. Because at least, my feelings were honest. But as of today, we are done. Saying that, I turned and walked away. This time, he didn't follow me. Behind me lay only the sound of his mother's frantic sobbing, the loud buzzing of relatives, and someone calling out for my parents. My bridesmaids hurried closely behind me. The heavy doors of the hotel ballroom swung open. Outside, the evening wind off the Hudson River hit me. The tulle of my dress whipped around my legs. My makeup was probably ruined, but I didn't care. The city air felt cold, but it was real. Cold, but not fake. My parents walked on either side of me. My mother hooked her arm through mine. My father said quietly, "Let's go home, honey." I nodded. But just as I was stepping off the curb to get into my father's car, the phone in my bridal clutch vibrated. It was a text message. Not from Jared, but from an unknown number. I opened it and saw a single line. If you think canceling the wedding fixed everything, you are dead wrong. If Arthur's family put a hold on that condo, there is no guarantee you get to keep it. I froze. A violent shiver ran down my spine. Before I could even show the text to my parents, a loud, furious scream erupted from the hotel entrance behind me. It was Arthur, roaring as if he had just discovered something infinitely worse than losing the real estate. And in that moment, I realized that canceling the wedding today was only the beginning. I stood paralyzed on the sidewalk. The message on my glowing screen seemed to burn into my retinas. If you think canceling the wedding fixed everything, you are dead wrong. I swallowed hard. My mother, standing next to me, noticed I had stopped and squeezed my arm. Sophia, what is it? I didn't answer immediately. I reread the text, then locked the screen. Nothing, Mom. Let's go home. I said it, but I knew damn well it was far from nothing. Behind us, Arthur's enraged voice echoed down the street. Jared, stop. I told you. His voice was shrill and frantic, completely stripped of his previous country club calmness. Then came Eleanor's panicked voice. What are you saying? How? How could this happen? The noise washed over my back in waves. I didn't turn around, I just felt my stomach tie itself into a knot. It was a bizarre feeling, not fear, exactly, but the bracing sensation before a massive impact. I stepped off the curb. The river wind whipped violently. My white dress rustled against the concrete. "Get in the car, honey," my dad said, holding the door open. I nodded, but just as I was ducking inside, rapid footsteps approached from behind. "Sophia, wait!" It was Jared. I froze for a second, then turned around. Jared jogged up to us, breathing heavily. His tuxedo jacket was askew. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He was no longer the elegant groom, just a man desperately trying to grasp something that had already slipped through his fingers. "Sophia, don't leave. I need to tell you something." I stared at him. His eyes had changed. It wasn't shame or wounded pride anymore. It was fear. Genuine, raw fear. I asked with dead calm. "What is it?" Jared dropped his voice to a hoarse whisper. "The condo. Did you really put it in your mother's name?" I nodded. "Yes." He exhaled sharply. But that breath brought no relief. If anything, it made him look heavier. "The paperwork is completely finalized?" I narrowed my eyes. "Why are you asking?" Jared looked around nervously and pulled me slightly aside, as if terrified someone was listening. "Sophia, listen to me. It's not as simple as you think." I didn't pull my arm away. I wanted to hear this. I wanted to know just how many dark secrets were hiding behind his family's facade. "Speak." Jared swallowed hard. "My dad already put an earnest money deposit down on it." My blood ran cold. "What deposit?" Jared looked me dead in the eye. "A deposit to finalize the sale of your condo to a third party." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Are you joking?" "No, I am not joking." Jared's voice dropped even lower. 2 months ago, my dad met with a guy. He told him the condo would be ours soon, and he took a massive cash advance to lock in the sale price. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. 2 months ago. Meaning, even before I had transferred the deed to my mother. Meaning, even back then, they were already treating my home as their personal piggy bank. I asked in an icy tone. "And you knew about this?" Jared lowered his head. I overheard my dad talking about it." "You overheard? Or you knew?" Jared didn't answer. I nodded. "Understood. And now what?" Jared grabbed my hand tightly. "Now, the buyer is demanding his money back. They're saying if the deal doesn't close as agreed, the deposit is forfeited, and they are going to sue us. Or worse." I stared at him, enunciating every word slowly. "What do your father's backroom deals have to do with me, Jared?" He stammered. "But my dad thought the condo was guaranteed to be ours." I cut him off. "It was mine." The air between us seemed to freeze. Jared looked at me, completely lost. "Sophia, please understand. If this gets out, my family is in massive trouble. My dad could lose a fortune." I smiled ironically. "Trouble? Do you know who is actually in trouble today?" Jared stayed silent. I continued. "You and your family took a deposit behind my back. You calculated everything behind my back. You treated my property as your own behind my back. And now that your scam has blown up in your faces, you're asking me to understand you?" "Jared, have you ever, even once, understood me?" My voice wasn't loud, but every word was a razor blade. Jared let go of my hand and took a step back. "Sophia, I didn't want things to go this far. But they have." Silence fell over us. The wind howled through the New York streets. In the distance, a taxi honked loudly. I looked at Jared for the last time. "Go back inside. Those are your family's problems. They don't concern me anymore." I turned to leave, but Jared called out again. "Sophia." I didn't turn back. What else could you possibly want to say? His voice grew ragged. If I tell my parents right now that there is absolutely no way to get the condo, would you reconsider us?" I closed my eyes for a second. Just 1 second. Then I opened them and turned to face him. Jared, you still don't get it. He froze. I spoke slowly. The problem isn't the condo. The problem is that in your heart, from the very beginning to the very end, I never came first. Jared had absolutely nothing to say to that. I got into the car. The heavy door slammed shut, completely silencing the noise of the city. Inside the cramped space, all I could hear was my own pulse. My mother, sitting next to me, gently placed her hand over mine. Sophia, are you okay? I nodded. I'm fine. But my voice was entirely hoarse. My father started the engine. We slowly pulled away from the curb. Through the tinted window, I watched Jared's figure grow smaller and smaller. He just stood there on the sidewalk, not running after the car, not shouting, just standing like a man who has lost something incredibly valuable and has absolutely no idea how to get it back. As the car merged onto the avenue, I leaned back against the leather seat, feeling entirely hollow. I wasn't crying. I wasn't talking. Just a void. After a few minutes, I pulled out my phone and reopened that threatening text message from the unknown number. I handed it to my dad in the front seat. Dad, look at this. My father glanced at the screen at the red light. His eyebrows knitted together. My mother leaned forward to read it too. Who sent this? I shook my head. I don't know. My father stayed quiet for a few blocks before speaking. This isn't just family drama anymore. This is serious. Dad. Do you think it's from Arthur's people? My father didn't answer right away. Possibly. But it could also be from a third party. When large sums of money are involved in New York real estate, people don't stop at sending nasty texts. My mother squeezed my hand tightly. Maybe we should go straight to the police. My father shook his head. Not yet. Let's see how this plays out first. I sat in silence, trying to put the puzzle pieces together. The deposit, the backroom deal, the threatening text, Arthur's furious screaming. This was no longer just about a greedy mother-in-law. There were third parties involved, illicit funds, and money makes people do unimaginably reckless things. The car pulled up to my parents' house. My dad opened the door. I stepped out. It was my childhood home, but stepping onto the porch felt different, like I had walked through an invisible door into a dark, underground world I had never been exposed to before. I was just about to unlock the front door when my phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't a text, it was an incoming call from the exact same unknown number. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the glass, paralyzed. Who is it, honey? My mother asked. I took a deep breath and hit accept. Hello? There was a heavy silence on the line for a couple of seconds. Then, a deep, cold male voice spoke. Is this her? I gripped the phone tighter. Yes. Who is this? The man let out a dark, ironic chuckle. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is the condo. My heart pounded against my ribs. What do you want? The voice on the other end was slow and methodical. I just want to remind you of one simple fact. A long pause. Someone invested a lot of money in that property. And nobody likes losing their money. A chill raced down my spine. Are you threatening me? He didn't answer the question directly. He just said, you should probably sit down and have another chat with Arthur's family. Otherwise, canceling a wedding is going to be the least of your problems. Do we understand each other? The call dropped, just the dial tone. I stood frozen on my parents' porch. The hand holding the phone was shaking slightly. My mother grabbed my shoulders. Sophia! What happened? I looked up at my mother, then at my father, and said in a very quiet voice, Dad. I don't think this is going to stop. The night wind howled through the trees. It felt even colder than by the river. And for the first time since I walked out of my wedding reception, I felt pure, unadulterated fear. Not the fear of losing the man I loved, but the fear of the nightmare that was just beginning. I stood completely motionless on the porch. The phone was still hot in my hand. The man's voice hadn't been loud or aggressive, he hadn't made an explicit, bloody threat. But it was precisely that slow, confident tone, as if he already held all the cards, that chilled my blood. My mother gently touched my shoulder again. "Sophia, say something." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "They called about the condo." My father stepped closer. "Give it to me." I handed him the phone. He looked at the call log in silence and asked, "What exactly did he say?" I recounted the conversation word for word, without adding or omitting a single detail. And the more I spoke, the more I realized that this was no longer a story about a greedy suburban family. We were dealing with shady individuals, massive amounts of money, and money drags everything else down with it. My mother sank onto the porch bench, clutching her chest. "Oh my God, how could this have happened?" My father remained silent for a long time, then spoke in his deep, resonant voice. "Sophia, tell me the absolute truth. Is all the paperwork for the condo 100% finalized?" "Yes, Dad. Completely. The deed is fully recorded in Mom's name. The quitclaim was notarized and filed with the county clerk. All taxes are paid." My father nodded slowly. "That's good." My mother stared at him. "What is good about it?" "We're getting extortion calls." My father turned to her. "It's good because, from a legal standpoint, we are in the clear. They cannot legally take the property from us." Hearing that calmed me down a fraction, but I immediately remembered the man's voice. Someone invested a lot of money. Nobody likes losing their money. If they couldn't take it legally, what would they do? I sat down on a patio chair, interlocking my fingers. "Dad, what if they cause a scene? What if they come after us?" My father looked at me. "Are you scared?" I stayed quiet. It wasn't the first time I had faced adversity, but this was entirely different. This wasn't a corporate dispute or a bad breakup. It was pure uncertainty. I had no idea who my enemy was, or what they were capable of. I answered honestly. "I'm not scared of standing my ground. I'm scared because I don't know what they are going to do." My father nodded. "The unknown is always frightening." Silence fell over us. Suddenly, my mother jumped up. "No, we can't just sit here, I'm calling them." My father grabbed her arm. "Call who? For what?" "To get to the bottom of this. Who did they get involved with? What are they planning to do to our daughter?" My father shook his head. "If you call Arthur or Eleanor right now, you'll just show them we are panicking." My mother froze. "So what? We just sit on our hands?" My father sighed. "Not sitting on our hands, but we keep a cool head." I looked at my dad. As always, he was a man of few words, but every word carried weight. "I believe the person who just called isn't necessarily Arthur's lackey." I frowned. "What do you mean? Could it be the guy who gave him the deposit? Or a broker? Or whoever is pulling the strings on this whole scam?" A shiver went down my spine. "Who is behind this?" My father nodded. "Deals like this are rarely clean, especially when someone takes a massive cash deposit on real estate they don't even own yet." Hearing this, my mother turned pale. "Are you saying this could be connected to the mob? Or shady lenders?" My father didn't finish the thought, but I understood perfectly. I took a deep breath, trying to force my heart rate down. "So, what's our next move?" My father looked at me. "First, you need to sleep. You've been pushed to your absolute limit today." I shook my head. "I won't be able to." My father studied my face and nodded. "All right. Then, I'll be blunt." I sat up straighter. "This is a problem we cannot handle on our own." "I understand. Do you want to call someone?" My father thought for a moment. "An old friend of mine, a lawyer. David. He used to handle high-stakes commercial real estate litigation in the city." I nodded. "Yes. Let's do it." My mother chimed in. Call him right now. My father pulled out his phone, but before he could even dial, my phone buzzed again in my hand. This time, a name flashed on the screen, Jared. I stared at it in silence. Is it him? My mother asked. I nodded. Don't answer it, she snapped, her brow furrowed. I hesitated for a split second, then hit the green button. Hello? There was silence on the other end, just heavy, ragged breathing. A moment later, Jared finally spoke. Sophia. Did you get home? His voice was hoarse, exhausted, entirely broken. I'm at my parents', I asked. Where are you? At my parents' house. Can you talk? I asked coldly. Yes. Sophia. Forgive me. I remained silent. He continued. I know I messed up today. But this isn't as simple as you think. I smiled ironically. You've already used that line tonight. Jared went quiet. What do you want? I demanded. He lowered his voice to a whisper. My dad just got a phone call. My heart skipped a beat. From who? They are demanding the money. I gripped the phone tighter. How much? Jared answered in a barely audible voice. $100,000. My mother, sitting close enough to hear, gasped. Oh, my God. I closed my eyes. $100,000. That wasn't just a lost deposit you could sweep under the rug. That was enough to financially ruin an entire family. And so? I asked. Jared sighed heavily. My dad doesn't have that kind of liquid cash right now. He's panicking. He's thinking about. He trailed off. I understood perfectly. Even though Jared was whispering, I finished the sentence for him. He's thinking about renegotiating with me. I couldn't help but laugh a dark, bitter laugh. Renegotiating with me. About what exactly? Jared stayed silent, but his silence was the most eloquent answer he could have given. I felt everything inside me turn to ice. There was no anger anymore, no pain. Just an absolute freeze. Jared. Yes. Tell your father, my voice was razor sharp and crystal clear, that from this day forward, my condo has absolutely nothing to do with you, your family, or any of your dirty backroom deals. Sophia, don't be so unreasonable. I am not being unreasonable. I am putting an end to this. But if we don't fix this, they are going to destroy us. They'll cause a massive scandal. Let them. Jared fell silent. Sophia, do you not understand what is at stake? I cut him off. You are the one who doesn't understand. A beat of silence passed. I continued. Do you honestly believe that I am going to clean up the catastrophic mess your family created? I don't want you to have to clean it up, but you're forcing my hand here. Jared went quiet, then whispered, I don't have any other way out. Hearing that was pathetic, but pity wasn't enough to make me step back into the line of fire. Yes, you do. Take responsibility. Your family started this fire. Your family needs to put it out. Jared chuckled bitterly. Easy for you to say. I nodded. Yes. Easy to say, but hard to do. Especially because from the very beginning, you've relied on everyone else to solve your problems for you. I have nothing left to say to you. I was about to hang up, but I added one last thing. Do not call me again. And I hung up. The screen went black. The porch was dead silent. My mother looked at me, her eyes red. Are you okay? I nodded. I'm fine. My father placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. I didn't say anything, but deep down, I knew that from this moment on, the point of no return had been crossed. Not with Jared, but with whatever storm was brewing on the horizon. My father lifted his phone. I'm calling David. The lawyer? I asked. My father nodded. Yes. He has enough experience to deal with sharks like this. I nodded in agreement, but anxiety still gnawed at my stomach. I knew the law could only solve the paperwork side of the problem. The rest involved human beings, their greed, and the violence that isn't written down in any legal code. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I lay in my childhood bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. The wedding dress was hung up in the corner of the room like a ghost. White, expensive, and completely meaningless. My phone rested on the nightstand. I half expected the anonymous man to call back, but he didn't. It was dead silence, the calm before the hurricane. As dawn broke, I finally drifted off for an hour. When I woke up, the sun was shining. But there was a new text message on my screen from that same unknown number. Just a single sentence: "Do you really think a lawyer is going to save you?" I stared at the screen, a cold shiver running down my spine. This was escalating faster than I thought. I sat up, hugging my knees to my chest. Outside, the morning traffic of the New York suburbs was picking up. A perfectly normal morning. If it weren't for yesterday, if I weren't a runaway bride, if I hadn't been dragged into a dark extortion plot with an entirely unpredictable ending. My mother cracked the door open. "Sophia? Are you awake?" I turned my head. "Yes, Mom." My mother looked at me with deep concern, walked in, and sat on the edge of the bed. "Did you sleep at all?" I smiled weakly. "A little," my mother sighed. After a day like yesterday, nobody could sleep. I didn't say anything. My mother stroked my hair, just like she used to when I was a little girl. "Don't overthink it. Your father and I are here. Nobody is going to hurt you." Hearing that made my chest tighten. I knew she was trying to comfort me, but I also knew she was terrified. I picked up my phone and handed it to her. "Mom, I just got this." My mother put on her reading glasses and read the screen. Her hand trembled. "Dear Lord. He's still threatening you." I took her hand. "Mom, don't be scared." She looked at me. "Are you not scared?" I stayed quiet for a second, then answered honestly. My mother squeezed my hand tightly. "We need to call the police right now." Before I could answer, my father appeared in the doorway. "Not yet." My mother whipped her head around. "Why?" My father walked in, sat in the armchair, and spoke with his usual gravity. "There is no actionable threat yet. Just vague words. If we bring the NYPD into this right now without hard evidence, these guys will just get more aggressive and cover their tracks." I looked at my dad. "So what do we do? Just wait to be attacked?" My father shook his head. "No. I've arranged for David to come over this morning." I nodded. "Okay. What time?" 9 o'clock. I checked the clock on the wall. It was just past 7 a.m., 2 hours to kill. I stood up. "I'm going to take a shower." "Yes," my mother nodded. "And eat something. Then we'll talk." I walked into the bathroom and looked in the mirror. It was my face, but the blushing bride from yesterday was gone. My makeup was scrubbed off, leaving only slightly swollen eyelids and dark circles. I stared at myself for a long minute and whispered, "Get it together, Sophia." I splashed freezing water on my face. Took a deep breath. Then another. When I walked back out, I was wearing regular clothes, a crisp white button-down and black slacks. Professional armor. No trace of the failed wedding. My father was brewing coffee. My mother was making eggs. Nobody mentioned yesterday, but the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. At 8:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. An unknown number? No, it was Chloe. I picked up. "Hey." Chloe's voice was frantic. "Sophia. Have you checked social media?" I froze. "What happened?" "Go on TikTok and Instagram right now." Someone posted the video from yesterday. My stomach dropped. I opened my apps. It only took one swipe. The video had been shot from one of the tables. The audio was crystal clear. Eleanor on the mic, How about we put it in my name today? My voice, I cannot put that condo in your name. And the exact moment I dropped the bomb that the deed was already in my mother's name. It was entirely unedited. Under the video, there were thousands of comments. Some were defending me, calling me a hero. Others were tearing the groom's family to shreds. Some were just eating popcorn, and others were mocking the whole situation as rich people drama. I scrolled for a few seconds, then locked the screen. "Are you okay?" Chloe asked over the line. "I'm fine. I'll deal with it. Do you want me to come over?" "No, I need to handle this here." "But thank you." "Okay, but call me the second you need anything." "I will." I hung up. My mother looked at me. "What is it, honey?" The video of the reception went viral online. My mother froze. "What?" My father sighed heavily. "I figured someone would post it." "How humiliating," my mother whispered. I grabbed her hand. "Mom, look at me. I didn't do anything wrong. I have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of." My mother nodded silently. "You're right." But I knew it crushed any parent to see their child exposed to millions of strangers on the internet. At 9:10 a.m., the doorbell rang. My dad stood up. "That must be David." I took a deep breath. My heart started beating a little faster. The front door opened, and a man in his 50s walked in. Tall, sharp features, wearing wire-rimmed glasses, and carrying a leather briefcase. He had an incredibly piercing gaze. "Come on in, David," my father said, shaking his hand. I stood up. "Hello, David." David looked at me. There was no pity in his eyes, no morbid curiosity. Just cold, professional evaluation. "You're Sophia." I saw the video. "Yes," I nodded. He sat down at the dining table and placed his briefcase in front of him. "I'll get straight to the point. Whose name is on the deed right now?" "My mother's." "The paperwork is fully executed with the city?" "Yes, completely." David nodded. "Good." My mother interjected. "But they are calling and texting us with threats." I slid my phone across the table. "Here, David." He read the messages and asked, "Did you reply?" "No." "Perfect." He set the phone down. "Now, listen to me very carefully." His voice was deep and authoritative. I sat up straighter. "From a strictly legal standpoint, you are bulletproof. The real estate was transferred legally. No one has any grounds to claim ownership of that condo." I nodded. He paused, and I instantly knew the hard part was coming. "However, if the other party put down a cash deposit and they have a paper trail, they will aggressively try to recover those funds." "From who?" I asked. "From whoever took the money." "Meaning Jared's father, Arthur." "Correct." My mother sighed in relief. "So what does that have to do with us?" David looked right at her. "Legally? Nothing. Practically? They will squeeze you to get to him." "How?" I asked. David locked eyes with me. "Those texts you received are just the appetizer." Silence filled the room. The air grew incredibly heavy. David continued. "I will be blunt. Are you willing to take this all the way?" I answered without a second of hesitation. "Yes." He nodded. "Good. But you need to prepare yourself mentally for what comes next." "What do you mean?" "This isn't going to end quickly. They will apply pressure. They will call, they will show up, they might even try to destroy your reputation in the city." I smiled bitterly. "The video is already all over the internet. It can't get much worse." He shook his head. "You're still young. You have no idea the kind of lies people can spin when money is on the line." I stayed quiet. In my head, the morning text echoed, "Do you really think a lawyer is going to save you? And if they cross the line?" I asked. David answered with ironclad certainty. "Then we hit back 10 times harder." It was a short sentence, but looking at him, I felt the ground beneath my feet solidify for the first time since yesterday. But right at that moment, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. An unknown number? No. The caller ID read, Arthur. My eyes went wide. My mother looked at me. Who is it, honey? I swallowed hard. It's Arthur. The room went dead silent. My finger hovered over the green button. I knew this call wouldn't be like the ones before. I stared at the name. It wasn't Mr. Arthur anymore. Just a name. A boundary had been drawn. Are you going to answer? My mother whispered. I didn't reply. I looked at my dad. He gave a subtle nod. Answer it. Put it on speaker. I understood. There was nothing to hide here. I took a deep breath and hit accept. Hello. There was a split second of static, and then Arthur's voice came through. It had none of its previous country club respectability. It was just pure, corporate ice. Sophia. Yes, I answered. Are your parents there? I looked at my dad. Yes. Arthur paused. Good. Put me on speakerphone. You are on speakerphone, I said, setting the phone down in the center of the table. The tension in the room snapped taut like a wire. Can you hear me? Arthur asked sharply. We hear you, my father replied. A brief pause, and then Arthur cut straight to the chase. I am calling to resolve this situation. Go ahead, my father prompted. Arthur's voice was heavy. Let's forget about yesterday. I frowned. Forget? A canceled wedding, a family humiliated on the internet, and he wants to just hit reset? I have no interest in fueling a public scandal, Arthur continued. Every family has a reputation to uphold. My father remained silent. Let him talk. But the issue of the condo. That we will not forget. I clenched my fists. Yes, of course. It all came back to the money. Arthur spoke slowly. You all know that I have a substantial amount of capital tied up in this. That is your business, my father replied flatly. Arthur's volume spiked. It is not just my business. It concerns your daughter. I smiled bitterly and leaned toward the mic. Excuse me, Arthur, but that condo is no longer in my name. Arthur went quiet for a beat. I know that. But it used to be yours. Used to be, I shot back. But not anymore. His tone turned glacial. This hostile tone tells me you are refusing to cooperate. I lifted my head. I have absolutely no obligation to cooperate in a fraudulent scheme that has nothing to do with me. The air in the room froze. My mother gripped my hand. David sat quietly next to me, observing the exchange like a hawk. Arthur let out a dark, joyless chuckle. Girls, your age are incredibly arrogant. I didn't respond. Let me be perfectly clear then, Arthur continued. Does your family intend to resolve this financial discrepancy? No, my father said. Just one word. Firm as a vault door. Arthur stayed silent for a few agonizing seconds. His voice dropped an octave. Say that again. No, my father repeated. Are you not afraid? Arthur's voice didn't waver. Of what? My father challenged. Of the fact that this won't end here. A chill ran down my spine. That phrasing was almost identical to the anonymous text message. I shot a glance at David. He tilted his head slightly, confirming my suspicion. Are you threatening us? My father asked. I am not threatening you. I am warning you, Arthur replied. I couldn't hold back anymore. Just say exactly what it is you want. A pause. I want to recover the funds I invested. Who did you give the funds to? It was an investment based on this condo. But you never held the deed, nor did you have any legal right to it. We had a verbal agreement. With who? I demanded. Arthur went silent. Not with me. I continued, my voice steady but sharp. You made a backdoor deal based on an asset you planned to extort from me at the altar. That is your problem, Arthur. Arthur sighed heavily. Do you honestly think that technicality is going to protect you? No, I answered. But it's the truth. He laughed again. How naive you are. A phrase that froze my blood. But before I could say anything else, David leaned in and spoke. His voice was incredibly deep, completely unbothered. Arthur. On the other end of the line, Arthur stopped dead. Who is this? David. Legal counsel for the family. A pause. Which David? We crossed paths on the Golden Hill Development project last year. Silence. This time, it stretched on for a long time. When Arthur finally spoke, the aggression was gone, replaced by extreme caution. Ah. David. David didn't waste time on pleasantries. I'll be direct. From a legal standpoint, you have absolutely zero basis to lay claim to this real estate. I am not claiming the real estate. Arthur deflected. You are doing exactly that by proxy. You are attempting to extort funds. I demand my deposit back. Then demand it from the party who accepted it, David fired back. Short, surgical, and clear. Arthur didn't respond immediately. This family has zero liability regarding your unexecuted, fraudulent contracts, David continued. But the condo was the collateral. Arthur objected. No. Your own arrogant assumption was the collateral, David corrected. The tension spiked. I looked at the lawyer. For the first time, I saw how a true professional could entirely dismantle a bully without ever raising his voice. David, do you really think it's that simple? Arthur said slowly. I think you are the one complicating it. You aren't in my shoes. I know the laws in this city. The law doesn't solve everything, does it? David paused deliberately. But if you violate it, it will certainly decide your fate. A massively long pause. I could clearly hear Arthur breathing on the other end of the line. Then, Arthur said, Fine. Just one word, but it wasn't a surrender. Then we will see who violates what. I clenched my fists. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. This was a declaration of war. Sophia, Arthur barked. Yes, I answered. How long do you think you can sit on the sidelines? I didn't answer. He laughed ironically. We'll be in touch. Click. The line went dead. No goodbyes, no sign-offs. Just the abrupt hang-up of a man who is absolutely certain the game isn't over. I sat in silence. No one spoke. My mother finally let out a shaky breath. My God, what has this turned into? My father looked at David. What's your read, David? The lawyer leaned back in his chair. It's not simple. What do you mean? I asked. He knows exactly what he's doing. I swallowed hard. Are we in danger? He looked right at me. Yes. One word. No sugarcoating. My mother shuddered. Sophia. I grabbed her hand. I'm okay. But inside, the calm was completely gone. But that wasn't a direct, actionable threat of violence, David continued. So, what is it? My father asked. Psychological warfare. Extortion. Through her workplace. Through social media. Through intimidation. I nodded. I understood perfectly. Those kinds of hits don't leave bruises on your body, but they can completely destroy your life. David stood up. I'll get to work. Where do we start? My father asked. By holding the line, David replied. I looked at him. Defensive positions? Yes, he nodded. He looked at me seriously. Remember, from this second forward, if anyone connected to them reaches out, you do not respond. Everything goes through me. Understood? And prepare yourself. For what? He said it slowly. This is going to be a marathon. I stayed quiet. In my head, that morning's text rang out again. Do you really think a lawyer is going to save you? I took a deep breath. I'm not afraid of a marathon. David looked at me and nodded with respect. Good. He picked up his briefcase. I'll be in touch. Call me the second anything happens. My dad walked him to the door. I stood up and walked over to the living room window. A light breeze was blowing outside, but my chest felt like it was strapped with lead. I watched the street. Cars drove by, people walked their dogs, the New York rhythm carried on. Everything was so stunningly normal that I suddenly realized something profound. No matter how big my personal nightmare was, the world wasn't going to stop spinning for me. But for me, the world had fundamentally shifted. I walked back into the living room. My mother was sitting at the table, her hands clasped tightly together. Her eyes were full of pure anxiety. My father was standing near the back patio door, smoking a cigarette. I hadn't seen him light a cigarette in years. I walked over. Dad, don't smoke too much. He crushed it out in the ashtray. Yeah. Just one word, but I knew he was vibrating with tension. I sat down. I don't think we should just sit here and wait. My mother looked up. What do you mean? I spoke slowly. I want to know exactly who is behind this. The air in the room went completely still. My dad turned around. What are you planning? At the very least, I need to know who I'm dealing with, I answered. My mother immediately shook her head. No. No, you can't. You cannot get more involved in this. I reached across the table and took her hand. Mom, even if I don't get involved, they are going to drag me into it anyway. My mother stayed quiet. I refused to sit around waiting to be terrorized by a ghost, I continued. My dad gave a faint nod. She's right. My mother snapped her head toward him. It's not about agreeing, my father said. She is already the target. That sentence locked it in. We were no longer outside observers. Dad, I asked. Do you know anyone on Arthur's side of the business? My father thought for a moment. I know Arthur's reputation. He's been in commercial real estate a long time. He has a lot of connections in the gray areas of the market. But who exactly is pulling the strings on this specific deal? I'm not sure. I nodded. Then I'll start with the person closest to him. Who? My mother asked. I looked at my phone. Jared. My mother frowned deeply. You're seriously going to talk to him again? I shook my head. Not to take him back. To extract information. My father looked at me intently. Are you sure about this? Yes. I nodded. I have absolutely nothing left to lose with him. There was silence, and then my father said, Call him. Put it on speaker. I picked up the phone. My heart beat a little faster, not out of lingering romantic feelings, but because I knew this conversation was a tactical move. I dialed the number. 1 ring. 2, 3. Jared picked up. Sophia. His voice was raspy, exhausted, defeated. Where are you? I asked. At home. Your apartment or your parents? My parents. Can you talk privately? Yes. Go ahead. I put him on speaker and set the phone on the table. I'll get straight to the point. Who is the man your father took the deposit from? Jared went silent. I didn't rush him. I just waited. Finally, he spoke. He's an associate of my dad's. What kind of associate? He's in real estate. What's his name? I pressed. Jared hesitated. Sophia, why do you need to know this? Because I need to know who is threatening my family, I answered coldly. Jared sighed. Don't poke the bear, Sophia. I smiled bitterly. I am already in the cage with the bear. A pause. Then he muttered. His name is Vince. They call him Vince, the landlord. My father flinched slightly. David had warned us that these deals weren't clean. A nickname like the landlord in this context screamed underground loan shark or mob fixer. Who exactly is he? I asked. Jared lowered his voice to a whisper. He's not a normal real estate broker. Meaning what? He has muscle. Connections. I understood. I didn't need him to spell it out. How much did your father take from him? $30,000. I froze. 30,000. And he's demanding 100,000 back? Yes. Why? There was a penalty clause in the contract. I laughed out loud. What kind of legal penalty triples the principal on a cancelled contract? Jared stayed quiet. You do realize this wasn't a legitimate real estate transaction, right? I said. Jared didn't argue. He just said quietly, my dad is out of his depth too. That is no longer my problem. Last question. Do you know who has been calling and texting me? He didn't answer instantly. I stared at the phone, trying to read his silence. He finally spoke, and he sounded like he wasn't lying. No. I don't. All right, Jared. Sophia. Please be careful. I didn't answer. I just hung up. No goodbyes. I sat back in my chair. My mother looked at me. So. A guy named Vince, the landlord. A dangerous man? Yes, I said. My mother wrung her hands. Oh my God. I've heard the name, my father said quietly. I turned to him. You know him? My dad shook his head slightly. Not personally, but I know the reputation. Guys like that do not run legitimate businesses in this city. At that moment, the front door opened. David had come back. He stood in the entryway. I heard that, he said. Do you know him? I asked. David nodded slowly. I know of him. Just one sentence, but it was heavy. And what kind of man is he? My mother asked, her voice shaking. David didn't answer right away. He just said, he is the kind of man you never want to do business with. But we are already in business with him, I said. I clenched my fists. David looked at me, his gaze incredibly deep. Then we have to play this exactly right. How? I asked. He spoke slowly. By refusing to engage in his dirty compromises. Right. I nodded. But inside I knew that was much easier. Said than done. Right at that exact second, my phone buzzed. A text message. I opened it. Same unknown number. Just one line. So, you found out the name. My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked up at my father, my mother, David, and said in a hushed voice, do you realize I hung up with Jared less than 2 minutes ago? Nobody said a word. The implication was crystal clear. This wasn't just extortion anymore. I was being actively surveilled. David walked over. Let me see. I handed him the phone. He read the screen and frowned. We don't have much time. What do you mean? I asked. He looked at me. Starting now, they are going to accelerate the pressure. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. It was a very distinct feeling. Not fear anymore. It was pure adrenaline. Readiness. I took a deep breath. Then we strike first. David nodded. Exactly. My dad looked at me. Are you sure? I looked him dead in the eye. I am not backing down. A short, absolute sentence. Because I knew that if I backed down an inch, they would take a mile. And if I stood my ground, I would at least preserve my own soul. Outside, the New York sun was climbing higher, but inside, a new storm was brewing. I knew the next interaction wasn't going to be via text. I stared at the glowing screen. So, you found out the name. There were no more hints or half measures. They knew. They knew I had just called Jared. They knew what I was digging for. And most importantly, they wanted me to know they were watching every move I made. I set the phone face down on the table, interlacing my fingers tightly. My palms were freezing cold. My mother looked at me, her voice trembling. Sophia, maybe we should just stop. I turned to her. How, Mom? How do we stop? My mother couldn't answer. I spoke slowly and clearly. If we don't go after them, they will come after us anyway. If we stay quiet, they will keep tightening the screws. If we retreat, they will go even further. My father gave a single nod. She's right. David, standing next to me, spoke in his gravelly voice. But we must act strategically. I looked at him. He didn't answer immediately. Right now, they are waiting for a reaction. I frowned. Why? So we expose our hand. If we panic, if we start calling them back, if we engage in a shouting match over text, they gain the psychological advantage. They get more information. I took a deep breath. Then I won't reply. Correct. David nodded. But if we just sit here doing nothing, is it going to magically fix itself? My mother pleaded. David looked at her. No. But it makes our next move less reckless. The air in the room grew suffocating again. I stood up and walked over to the window. The sun was at its peak. The Manhattan skyline loomed in the distance, millions of people going about their day, completely oblivious to the fact that I was standing in the dead center of a hurricane. I turned around. David. Yes. You said we need to strike first. Right? What does that actually mean? He looked at me and said, It means we set up a sit-down. With Vince. My mother gasped in horror. No! Absolutely not. You can't. Even I froze. With who? With Vince? As soon as the name was spoken aloud, a chilling silence fell over the room. My mother aggressively shook her head. No, no, no. How on earth can you go meet with a mobster? My father also spoke up, his voice low and warning. David, is that truly necessary? David's expression didn't change a fraction of an inch. It is necessary. Why? I demanded. He spoke methodically. Because right now, they are operating from a position of absolute power in the shadows. We don't actually know what Vince's endgame is. Without knowing his exact angle, we are defending blind. I stayed quiet. His logic was brutal to accept, but it was flawless. My mother grabbed my hand. Sophia, please do not go. I looked at her. Her eyes were swimming with pure terror. My heart broke, but I knew there were some monsters you simply couldn't run away from. I won't go alone, Mom. It's still too dangerous, she cried. I will be with her, David stated. My mother whipped around to face him. But I know how to handle men like him in this city. A short sentence, but it radiated absolute competence. My father looked at me. It's your call, Sophia. I took a deep, shuddering breath. Everything flashed through my mind in a microsecond: the wedding, Eleanor's smug face, Jared's pathetic silence, Arthur's corporate threats, the text messages, the cold voice on the phone. Everything converged into a single, narrow path that I could no longer step off. I'll go, I said. My mother squeezed my hand. Sophia. I squeezed back. I am not hiding anymore, Mom. My mother fell silent, tears in her eyes, and slowly let go of my hand. Okay. This afternoon, David said. I looked at him. Where? I'll arrange neutral ground, he replied. Nobody asked any more questions. We all understood that sit-downs with men like Vince weren't scheduled at Starbucks. I sat down, feeling the fear morph into something else, a high-wire tension, like a violin string pulled to its absolute limit. Just then, my mother's cell phone rang on the kitchen counter. She looked at the screen, and all the color drained from her face. Who is it, Mom? It's Eleanor, she whispered. We all froze. My mother hesitated, her finger hovering over the screen. Answer it, my dad ordered. My mother pressed accept and put it on speaker. Hello. Eleanor's voice wasn't sharp and imperious like yesterday. It was weak. Shaky. Hello. My mother didn't say anything. Let her speak. Eleanor hesitated. I want to talk. About what? My mother asked coldly. About the kids. My mother looked at me. I gave a microscopic shake of my head. My mother understood the assignment. We have absolutely nothing left to discuss. Wait! Eleanor practically begged, the words rushing out of her. Please, listen to me. Her voice was trembling uncontrollably. I know I made a mistake yesterday. I froze. A mistake. It was the first time she had ever uttered those words. My mother didn't soften. You've said enough. No, Eleanor stammered. I don't want the condo anymore. Everyone in the room stared at the phone. My mother frowned. What are you talking about? I don't want it. I just want this nightmare to be over. How exactly do you expect it to be over? My mother asked bluntly. Please. Tell Sophia to talk to those people. Tell her to tell them she has nothing to do with it. Eleanor pleaded in a pathetic whisper. I couldn't help it. I laughed. A cold, bitter laugh. I walked over and took the phone from my mother. Hello, Eleanor. Dead silence on the other end. Then, a whimpering voice. Sophia. Do you think if I tell them to stop, they'll listen? I have no idea, I said. Eleanor stayed quiet. But you already know this train has left the station, I pressed. She just kept breathing shakily. So why are you calling me? I demanded. She let out a ragged sigh. I just wanted you to help us. I gripped the phone tightly. Help you with what? To talk to them. So they forgive us. I smiled a humorless smile. Do you think I have the power to do that? She didn't answer. Or do you think that, out of pity for you, I'm going to take the bullet for your husband's scam? My voice wasn't loud, but it cut like glass. Eleanor burst into tears. Sophia, I messed up. Please forgive me. I stood in silence. I listened to her sobbing, but my heart was a stone. Forgive me. If those words had been spoken 24 hours ago, maybe my entire life would be different. But now, it was way too late. I spoke slowly and deliberately. I didn't create this mess, Eleanor. You clean it up with whoever you owe money to. I hung up. No waiting for a response. My mother looked at me with deep sorrow. Sophia. I'm not a cruel person. I know you aren't, Mom, I said. She sounded broken, my mother sighed. I exhaled a long, heavy breath. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel better. But my vision was 20/20. This wasn't about feelings or forgiveness anymore. This was about who was going to pay the piper for their own greed. David looked at me. Be ready for this afternoon. I will. I nodded. I looked out the window. The afternoon sun was blazing over the city, but I knew the meeting I was walking into wouldn't resemble any conversation I had ever had before. That afternoon, I dressed like I was going into a corporate boardroom. A crisp white blouse, tailored black trousers, a blazer, and just enough makeup to look alert and unfazed. I stood in front of the hallway mirror not to fix my hair, but to look myself in the eye. I was no longer a runaway bride. I was no longer a victim. I was a woman stepping into the arena. My mother stood behind me. Sophia, are you sure about this? I turned and nodded. Yes. She stepped forward and adjusted my collar. It was a mother's instinct, a habit, but her fingers were trembling violently. If anything feels wrong, you call the police immediately. I will. It's time, my dad said, stepping out of the home office. I grabbed my purse and walked out the door. I didn't look back. I knew that if I looked back and saw the terror in my mother's eyes, I might lose my nerve. I got into the backseat of David's black SUV. The drive into the city was completely silent. After about 20 minutes, I broke the silence. "David, where are we meeting him?" "At a coffee shop in Midtown," he replied from the driver's seat. I was stunned. A coffee shop? A guy like this? In a crowded public place in Manhattan? "A public place is the safest place on earth to meet a shark," he answered smoothly. I understood. Guys who operate in the shadows don't like a public audience, especially when there's no need for theatrical violence. The SUV pulled up in front of a massive, bustling cafe near Bryant Park. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls, dozens of people working on laptops, the hiss of espresso machines. A completely normal New York scene. But that normalcy felt incredibly surreal. I stepped out of the car, took a deep breath of the exhaust-filled air, and walked inside. It smelled like roasted coffee and pastries. Soft jazz played over the speakers. No one in the room had any idea why I was there. David led me up the stairs to the second-floor mezzanine, toward a secluded corner booth. Sitting there was a man in his mid-40s. He wore a sharp black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to the forearms, revealing thick wrists and an expensive watch. He was leaning back in the booth, staring out the window at the Manhattan traffic. He wasn't rushed. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was just waiting. David stopped walking and muttered, "That's him." My heart hammered against my ribs. Not in terror, but bracing for the impact. I walked up to the table. The man slowly turned his head. His gaze wasn't aggressive, nor was it cartoonishly evil, it was just deep. Bottomless. The kind of look that scans your DNA in 3 seconds. He offered a faint, chilling smile. "You made it." His voice was a low, gravelly baritone. He didn't need to introduce himself. I knew this was Vince. David sat down first. I slid into the booth across from Vince. Nobody was in a rush to speak. The silence stretched out for several long seconds over the jazz music. Finally, Vince spoke. "You're Sophia." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. "Yes," I nodded. He looked me up and down and smirked. "You don't look like what I expected." "What did you expect?" I asked, keeping my voice dead level. I didn't blink. I just stared right back into his eyes. He gave a tiny nod of respect. "Doesn't matter. Let's get down to business." David leaned forward. "Vince." "It's been a long time." Vince shifted his gaze to the lawyer. "David. You haven't changed a bit. Still playing the Boy Scout." They spoke like old acquaintances, but underneath every syllable was a lethal tension. Vince leaned back into the leather booth. "All right. Let's cut the bull." He looked at me. "Do you know why I called this meeting?" "I know," I answered. "Let's hear it." "You want your money," I said slowly. Vince let out a dark chuckle. "Direct. I like that." He tapped a finger on the table. 30 grand. I wasn't surprised. "Plus, the penalty. 100 grand total," he confirmed. "Correct." I nodded. "But that is not my debt." Vince didn't react immediately. He stared at me for a long time, then said, "You're a smart girl." I stayed quiet. "Being smart doesn't always keep you alive in New York." He continued. "What do you think I want, Sophia?" "I think you want your money back," I said. "But you are barking up the wrong tree." Vince smirked ironically. "I don't think I am." I frowned. "Why?" He tilted his head. "Because the whole mess started with you." "No," I fired back instantly. "It started with Arthur's fraudulent decision." "True," Vince acknowledged. "But if you didn't own a $1.5 million piece of prime Manhattan real estate, he wouldn't have had anything to leverage for my cash." "Also true. But that doesn't make it my fault." Vince went quiet for a second, then gave a dark smile. You're absolutely right. I was caught off guard. I didn't expect a guy like him to concede a point so easily. But then he instantly added, but being right doesn't mean you get to walk away. I clenched my fists under the table. What do you want from me? He looked dead into my eyes. I want you to help solve the problem. No, I shook my head. No hesitation. No sugarcoating. Vince wasn't shocked, he just gave a slow nod. Figured as much. David intervened. Vince, I'll spell it out for you. This family has absolutely zero legal or financial ties to your backdoor deal. Go find the man who owes you the cash. Vince turned his dead eyes to David. Oh, I'll find him. Then we're done here. Vince shook his head slowly. No. The air just got a lot heavier. I will find him, Vince continued, his voice dropping an octave. But I don't just squeeze from one side. I understood immediately. He was going to use me as leverage to break Arthur. Vince smirked. I wouldn't call it extortion. I call it aggressive motivation. I glared at him. What you're doing is illegal. Vince shrugged lazily. Maybe. You think I got to where I am in this city by being afraid of a lawsuit? It was a casual remark, but it radiated pure, unadulterated ice. I stayed quiet. Not because I was out of comebacks, but because I realized something crucial. This man didn't speak to be heard. He spoke to dictate terms. To apply pressure. To offer a rigged choice. He looked at me. You have two roads here, Sophia. I didn't ask what they were. I knew he was going to tell me. Road 1. You stay out of it, and you take whatever collateral damage comes your way. Road 2. You help me put the screws to Arthur, and this all goes away quietly. Quietly for who? I asked. Vince smirked. For everyone. I shook my head. No. One sharp word. Without a second thought, Vince stared at me. His expression shifted. It wasn't anger. It was a reevaluation. You've got more spine than I gave you credit for. I didn't respond. He nodded slowly. All right. Fine. Just one word, but it wasn't a conclusion. Then we'll play the long game. I squeezed my fists, but I didn't flinch. David stood up. We're done here. Vince stood up as well, buttoning his suit jacket. Yeah, we're done for today. He looked down at me. If you change your mind, I'm always around. I didn't answer. I just turned on my heel and walked toward the stairs. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I just walked. When I finally pushed through the glass doors out onto the Manhattan sidewalk, I exhaled. One massive, shuddering breath, like I had just broken the surface of the ocean after nearly drowning. David walked out right behind me. Are you okay? I'm fine, I nodded. But deep down, I knew this wasn't going to be solved with words in a coffee shop. Vince had said, we'll play the long game, and guys like him don't play by corporate rules. I looked up at the sky. The afternoon sun was blindingly bright, but I felt absolutely freezing. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that tomorrow the real war was going to begin. I got back to my parents' house just as the sun was setting. The light wasn't as harsh anymore, but the glare seemed to stick in my eyes, making the edges of reality feel blurry. Not from the light, but from the sheer exhaustion of the tension. My mother was already pacing by the front door. Sophia, you're back! Her voice was breathless, frantic. I nodded. Yeah. She grabbed me by the shoulders and looked me up and down like I had just returned from a war zone. I offered a weak smile. I'm okay. But she didn't believe me. She grabbed my hand and pulled me inside. Come in. Tell us everything. My dad was sitting at the dining table. He didn't ask questions, he just looked at me, waiting. I sat down. David followed me inside and closed the door. Nobody was in a rush to speak. I poured myself a glass of water and took a long sip. I met with him. And what kind of man is he? My mother asked instantly. I thought about it for a second. He's not what we pictured. He isn't loud. He isn't a street thug. But he is incredibly dangerous. My father nodded grimly. The quiet ones in that business always are. I recounted the entire meeting. Every word, every glance, his specific cadence. The more I spoke, the more clearly I could see Vince's dead eyes staring across the table. How he applied maximum pressure without ever raising his voice. How he casually dropped the line. We'll play the long game, like he was discussing a round of golf. When I finished, my mother asked in a hushed whisper, "Were you terrified?" I didn't answer right away. I looked down at my hands. They were still shaking slightly with adrenaline. Yes, I admitted honestly. My mother gripped my hand tightly. Then let's just drop it. Let's give them whatever they want. I shook my head. It's way past the point of stopping. Did he issue a direct threat? My father asked. Yes. He gave me two options. Which were, stay on the sidelines and get destroyed as collateral damage, or actively help him extort Arthur to get the money back. Don't you dare pick the second one. My mother gasped. I smiled a bitter smile. I didn't. And how did he react to that? My dad pressed. I remembered his dead-eyed stare, his slow nod, and that chilling phrase. He wasn't surprised. But he isn't going to stop. The air in the room grew suffocating. Exactly as I predicted, David said from the corner. What did you predict? I asked. He won't walk away. Not just for the money. I frowned. Then, for what? David looked at me. For his reputation on the street. Just one sentence, but it spoke volumes. I understood. A guy like Vince the landlord doesn't just need his $100,000, he needs the city to know nobody screws him over and gets away with it. So what do we do now? My mother asked. Panic rising in her voice. We brace for impact, David said flatly. Impact from what? I asked. David spoke slowly. Starting tomorrow, the hits will start coming. I clenched my fists. What do you mean? He didn't get a chance to answer. Because the answer arrived faster than any of us could have anticipated. My cell phone rang on the table. It wasn't an unknown number. It was my office. My boss. I picked it up. Hello? My boss's voice sounded incredibly strained. Sophia. Can you come into the corporate office right now? I froze. Did something happen? She stammered. Just. Get down here. We need to have a meeting. My stomach dropped to the floor. I'm on my way. I hung up. What is it, honey? My mother asked. My firm. My boss wants me in the office right now. Something went wrong. My father stood up instantly. I'll drive you. I shook my head. No. I need to walk into this one alone. My father studied my face, saw my resolve, and nodded slowly. Be careful. I will. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked toward the door. This time, I didn't hesitate. I knew exactly what this was. This was the impact David had warned me about. I pulled up to my company's Manhattan headquarters. Everything looked normal, but the atmosphere inside felt totally radioactive. The receptionist at the front desk gave me a wide-eyed, uncomfortable stare. I swiped my badge and went up. On my floor, the open-plan office was dead silent. People were staring at their monitors a little too hard. They know. The viral wedding video had made it to corporate. I walked up to my boss's glass office and knocked. Come in. I walked in. My boss was sitting behind her desk, looking miserable. And sitting next to her was a man I had never seen before, an older guy in a $3,000 suit with wire-rimmed glasses and a completely deadpan expression. You called me, I said. Yes, Sophia. Take a seat. I sat down. The man stared at me. He didn't say hello. Didn't introduce himself. He just evaluated me like a bad spreadsheet. Sophia, this is Andrew. He's a senior partner at our primary investment firm, my boss said nervously. I nodded. Hello. He didn't nod back. You are Sophia. It wasn't a question. Yes. You are currently experiencing some highly publicized personal issues. I looked him dead in the eye. It is a private family matter. Andrew smirked, a cold, corporate reflex. It stopped being private yesterday. I knew exactly where this was going. What are you referring to? He slid an iPad across the desk. It was paused on the TikTok video of my wedding reception. This footage is currently accumulating millions of views across multiple platforms. I didn't blink. Our firm does not maintain relationships with individuals who carry unmitigated reputational risks, he continued smoothly. I clenched my fists under the desk. Reputational risks. Because I refused to be extorted out of my life savings by my in-laws, I was a liability. He shrugged. I don't care about the context of the video. I care about the optics. I turned to my boss. Does the firm agree with this assessment? She looked down at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. Sophia. I am so sorry, but on a personal level I understand, but the equity partners, I nodded. Everything was crystal clear. I turned back to Andrew. What exactly do you want? Do you want me to step down from the Hudson project? Andrew didn't even blink. Because of the virality of this scandal, we believe it is in everyone's best interest if you take an indefinite, unpaid leave of absence. I understood. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a corporate execution. I stood up. Understood. My boss flinched. Sophia. I looked at her. I don't want to compromise the firm. She stayed silent. I turned around and walked out of the glass office without another word, without a single argument. I knew this was just the opening salvo. I walked out of the building. The New York sky had turned a bruising gray. I stopped at the corner of the avenue and pulled out my phone. There was a new text message from the unknown number. Well? Do you get the picture now? I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. I just gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. For the first time, I felt the sheer, terrifying weight of what I was up against. They weren't just making idle threats. They were dismantling my life, brick by brick, methodically and ruthlessly. And I was standing right in the blast radius. I stood on the Manhattan sidewalk, staring at the message. Well? Do you get the picture now? Just 7 words, but a block of ice slid down my spine. There was zero doubt left in my mind. The person orchestrating this wasn't just angry, he was conducting a symphony of psychological warfare. Step by step, designed to back me into a corner until I was so terrified I would hand over the keys to my life voluntarily. But the strangest thing happens to the human brain when you are pushed right up to the edge of a cliff. Sometimes, you stop shaking. I locked my screen, took a deep breath of the city air, and walked toward the subway. On the ride back to my parents' house in the suburbs, I didn't put on headphones, I didn't cry. I just sat perfectly upright, my hands folded in my lap, focusing on one single, absolute truth. If I surrendered today, if I took even one step backward, I would spend the rest of my life as a mark. I would be a woman who could be broken, intimidated, and robbed by a couple of phone calls and dirty corporate politics. When I walked through my parents' front door, my mother took one look at my face and knew. What did they do to you, honey? She asked, her voice cracking. I walked into the living room and dropped my purse onto a chair, feeling so bone-tired I could barely stand. My father and David were sitting at the dining table. I slid my phone across the wood to my dad and spoke slowly. They made their move, Dad. The investment partners forced me to take an indefinite leave from the firm. They didn't say the word fired, but everyone in that room knew exactly what it was. It's because of the viral video. My mother collapsed into the armchair. Oh my God. These people are purely evil. My father read the text message. A dark, furious shadow crossed his face. David watched me for a long moment before asking, "Tell me exactly what was said in that office." I recounted the whole thing: the call from my boss, the presence of the corporate partner named Andrew, and his cold speech about reputational risks. When I finally stopped talking, I felt a fraction lighter. It was as if the invisible terror had finally taken a physical shape. And you can fight something that has a shape. It's a classic pressure tactic, David nodded. So what do I do now? I asked. David leaned back, his voice slow but forged in iron. We stop dodging. What are we supposed to do? My mother cried in a panic. Just sit here and wait for the next bomb to go off? David turned his sharp gaze to my mother. If we keep dodging, they will smell blood in the water. They will think we are terrified. And if they think we are terrified, they will put her head on a chopping block. I looked at him. I'm listening. He nodded approvingly. Step 1, document everything. Every text, every call log, the video, the HR emails. Step 2, I am going to draft a formal legal notice to your firm's partners, threatening litigation for illegal retaliation and wrongful termination based on a private extortion attempt. Step 3, David didn't get to finish his sentence. The doorbell rang. We all froze. My mother looked at the heavy oak door in sheer terror. Who is it? My dad stood up. I stood up with him. Suddenly, my heart started hammering against my ribs, a bizarre premonition that was neither entirely good nor entirely bad. My father swung the door open. Standing on the porch was Jared. But it wasn't the polished, country club Jared I had sat across from at the coffee shop, nor the pale, defeated groom from the wedding. This man looked destroyed. His hair was a chaotic mess, his eyes were sunken and bruised purple with exhaustion. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt and had a 3-day beard, like he hadn't slept a wink since the reception. Why are you here? My mother demanded, her voice dripping with ice. Jared dropped his gaze to the floor. Please, Mrs. Miller. Let me talk to Sophia. It is a matter of life and death. I took a step forward. Come in. Sophia, no, my mother started. I want to hear what he has to say, I said firmly. Jared stepped inside, but he didn't sit down. He stood awkwardly in the center of the living room, his knuckles white as he gripped a thick manila folder. His eyes were bloodshot. Sophia, he croaked out. I'm sorry. But I didn't come here to beg you to take me back. Or to ask for your forgiveness. Then what are you doing here? I asked, looking dead into his eyes. Jared swallowed hard and practically shoved the manila folder toward me. I came to give you your life back. Nobody breathed. I took the folder and flipped it open. Inside was a mountain of paperwork. Copies of bank transfers, real estate contracts, printed text exchanges, and a small digital voice recorder clipped to the pocket. What is all this? I asked. His voice was ragged. It's what my father did. And what he was planning to do to you next. And then, as if terrified that if he stopped he would lose his nerve, Jared started talking fast. The words tumbled out of him in a breathless, frantic rush, but every single syllable made the air in the room turn to ice. It turned out Arthur hadn't just taken a $30,000 cash advance from the mobster. He had also drafted a completely separate, illicit contract stipulating that after the wedding, I would sign a quitclaim deed transferring the condo to him under the guise of family estate planning. Worse than that, Arthur had forged a promissory note. If I had refused to sign the condo over after the wedding, he was going to take that forged note to the police and claim that my family had borrowed the $1.5 million from him prior to the wedding, framing me for felony wire fraud and marital extortion. The entire trap was rigged with tripwires. The second I had walked into their house as his daughter-in-law, the steel jaws would have snapped shut on my neck. Hearing this, my mother clutched her chest, struggling to breathe. Oh my God. Dear God in heaven. My father leaped up from the table, his eyes practically glowing with homicidal rage. I just stood there, completely immobilized, my entire body turned to stone. I thought I had seen the absolute rock bottom of their greed, but I was wrong. They were more calculating, more psychopathic than I could have ever imagined in my worst nightmares. I picked up the digital recorder. "And what is this?" "That is a recording from yesterday afternoon," Jared whispered. My dad was having a screaming match with Vince in his home office. Vince was threatening to break his legs for the money. My dad told him that if the condo fell through, he was going to trigger the forged promissory note, and that Vince needed to terrorize your family to force you to cave. I stood outside the door and recorded the whole thing. "Give it to me," David said, holding out his hand. The living room fell dead silent as David hit play. Arthur's voice. Vince's voice. Crystal clear. Word for disgusting word. There was even a specific exchange where Arthur snarled, "If this bitch doesn't cave, go after her corporate job. Ruin her reputation in the city. She'll come crawling to us on her knees." And Vince's chilling reply, "I don't need her on her knees, Arthur. I need my 100 grand. What you do to the girl is your own damn business." The recording clicked off. Nobody spoke. I stood there, feeling something inside me drop into an endless, dark abyss. But this time, it wasn't pain. It was absolute, 0-degree ice, the cold clarity of someone who has stared into the darkest depths of human depravity. I turned my eyes back to Jared. "Do your parents know you brought this to me?" "No," he shook his head. "If they knew, they would have locked me in the house." "Why did you do it?" Jared hung his head. He stayed quiet for a long, agonizing minute before forcing the words out of his throat. "Because for the first time in my entire life, I looked in the mirror and realized what a pathetic coward I am. A coward because I knew they were shady, but I kept my mouth shut. A coward because I blindly worshipped my parents. A coward because I let them put a target on the back of the woman I loved. Sophia, I have no right to ever ask you to look at me again. But I couldn't let them destroy you." I looked at him. In that moment, the burning rage evaporated. All I felt was a profound, overwhelming sadness. Sadness for a man who had been too weak to stand up for the truth when it mattered. A man who only found his spine when the whole world had already burned down around him. "That's enough," David's booming voice broke the silence. "I can work with this." He looked at me, a fierce light in his eyes. "Sophia, it's your call. If you give me the green light, I will take every single piece of this, the forged documents, the extortion texts, the wiretap, the HR emails straight to the district attorney and the FBI. I will burn them to the ground legally." I stayed quiet. My mother was staring at me. My father was staring at me. Jared was staring at me. They were all waiting for the verdict. I thought about my wedding day. I thought about my mother, who had possessed the foresight to pull me out of the trap. I thought about the fire in my dad's eyes when he roared, "We are giving our daughter away, we are not selling her." I thought about the mafia threats, the cold dead eyes of Vince in the coffee shop, everything I had lost over the last 72 hours. But then, I thought about something else. If I let this consume me, if I became obsessed with revenge, I would carry their toxic sludge with me for the rest of my life. I lifted my chin. My voice was perfectly serene. I don't care if they rot in a federal penitentiary for the rest of their lives. But I want the full weight of the law to drop on them so heavily they never have the opportunity to destroy another human being ever again. And I want my family's name, and my career, completely restored. David nodded sharply. Done. After that, the dominoes fell faster than I could have ever predicted. David filed the massive criminal complaint. The evidence was irrefutable. The investment partners at my firm, upon receiving a devastating legal threat from David outlining their complicity in an active extortion ring, instantly backed down, issued a groveling corporate apology, and reinstated me on the Hudson project with a massive bonus. Vince the landlord was indicted by a federal grand jury on racketeering and extortion charges. Arthur's respectable, country club mask was ripped off in the New York Post. His business empire collapsed overnight. Eleanor, the socialite who cared so much about public embarrassment, reportedly locked herself inside her house and refused to show her face in public. And Jared. Jared quietly packed up his life, moved to the Midwest, and finally broke free from the toxic gravitational pull of his family. 3 months later. A quiet, breezy afternoon. I stood in the massive living room of the Manhattan condo, the deed still safely tucked away under my mother's name, watching the golden hour sunlight spill across the hardwood floors. My mother was out on the terrace, watering the potted plants. My father was sitting at the kitchen island, reading the Wall Street Journal. None of us talked about the nightmare anymore, but I knew that every single one of us had navigated our own violent storm to get here. My mother walked inside, wiping her hands on an apron, and smiled at me. "Sophia, I was just thinking. Whenever you're ready, we can hire David to transfer the deed back into your name." I walked over and wrapped my arms around her from behind, resting my chin on her shoulder. "There's no rush, Mom. Let's leave it as is. The most valuable thing in this world isn't a name on a piece of paper. It's the fact that, because of you, I still have my life." My mother didn't say anything, but I felt her shoulders tremble slightly as she leaned into the hug. My father looked up from his newspaper, peered over his reading glasses, and said, "If there is peace in your house, and absolute clarity in your mind, then you are the richest person on earth." I smiled. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the New York evening was slowly rolling in. The setting sun cast a brilliant gold over the distant skyscrapers. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely, profoundly light. Not because I had defeated anyone, but because I hadn't lost myself in the process. Sometimes, a cancelled wedding feels like the end of the world. But sometimes, it is the ultimate salvation. And looking out at the city, I realized a fundamental truth. Not every woman who walks out of her wedding is a tragic failure. Sometimes, the woman who has the courage to turn her back and walk away at the exact right moment is the one who saves her dignity, secures her future, and preserves the absolute purest part of her soul.